everybody, Todd Schiller with CFI Pro, and we are back for another exciting installment. And I'm telling you, this is the absolute stuff that I dig more than anything. Today we're going to be talking about the regs. You know the reason why I love the regs? There's nothing that sounds as smart to me as a person who can regurgitate legal FARs, or FARs in general. When you have somebody that can say, well, in accordance with 61 dot or 91 dot or 135 dot or 121 dot, and can tell you exactly where the answer is located, I'm going to tell you, man, that's a person who knows their trade. And we've got a lot of money wrapped up in this trade. Why are we not learning our trade more? Know your trade. I've said it so many times in other videos. And the first part that we have to do as a flight instructor is we have to know how do we go about certifying people to become a pilot. And that's literally part 61. And then we have all the different ways we can lose our pilot certificate, which is part 91. And then, hey, I don't know what that means. Well, that's FAR part 1, that's definitions. And then what if you're a bona fide flight school certified by the FAA? Well, that's 141. And what if worst case scenario happens, you have an accident, incident, or overdue aircraft? Well, that's NTSB Part 830, only about 2.5 pages long. I don't know how to tell you how easy this stuff is, as long as you have someone that's willing to take the time to show you how it's done. And that's me, folks, because I'm here, and I want to tell you one of the best tools I love to use. If you don't have one of these and you want to be a pro instructor, you're missing out. You got to get one of these books. Let me show you this book. You said a call to the Federal Aviation Regulations Explained. It used to be done by this company here, Jeppesen, but not anymore. There's the company that's always published it is now just has it on their own, and they are called JetLaw. Let it focus. JetLaw.com. JetLaw.com. So go to JetLaw.com and buy you a copy of this. You will not be disappointed. The great thing about this book is anytime you have any questions, you simply open it up just like you would a standard regulation book. So I'm having questions about 6189, general limitations to a student pilot. Well, when I turn to it here in the book, it reads just like a regular FAR. It has the FAR that's in there. But beyond that, it has explanations, preambles, court cases, advisory circulars, legal interpretations. It's unbelievable. You can really, really, really understand this more if you had a book like this. So if you really want to be the consummate professional in the FARs, buy this book. What if you don't want to buy this book? What if you don't have the money to buy this book? Go borrow the money to buy this book. This is a great book. All right, so honestly, let's say you don't want to buy this big, thick book, which is all the FARs explained for part 1, 61, 91, 141, and NTSB Part 830. Okay, you don't want to buy that book. What do you do now? Well, it's pretty simple. Every single FAR that you learn, you have to have a very clear scenario as to the reason why you're going to use it. If you can't think of a reason that you're going to use that reg, then you need to research the reg more. Like, for instance, if I asked you a question about a medical, if I said to you, I'm the DPE, and I ask you to check right and say, all right, so you have a commercially rated pilot who wants to go out and do some flight training, and he just wants to go out and get current. His flight review is already gone. He's been more than 2 years since he's been in an airplane. And he just wants to go out and get current so he can go rent an airplane from the school. He's a commercial, multi-single rated pilot, and he wants to fly one of the 172s at the flight school. What's the minimum medical this guy would need to go out and do dual training with you? What do you think the answer is? Second class? Some of you are saying second class right now. Nope, it wouldn't be second class. He only needs second class if he wants to operate under the privileges of a commercial pilot certificate. Now, some of you are saying third class. Todd, it has to be third class. I know it's not first class. It's only for those ATP people. There's jet jocks. And I'm like, nope, it ain't third class either. It's no medical. Because 61.23 says you only need a medical if you plan on operating as a required crew member or pilot in command. And you're not. So what do you need? What do you need that? So you would say, well, in accordance with 61.23, the guy's not exercising any pilot privileges. He's just going out and get some training by Todd Shellnut. Doesn't need a medical. That's why it's important for you to know these regs. Because if you were doing a check ride with me, that's the question I would ask you. I would ask you that exact question to see how much you knew about what you need to have and why you need to have it. And I would ask a CFI that question. So without further ado, let's get started and kind of see what we have coming in for this week. What do we have in store for this week? Now remember, if you're joining me on YouTube, all the fancy, juicy everything's going to be found on my Patreon. So please go over there and join my Patreon and become one of my patrons on there, and you'll get all the juicy tidbits. You will find out, though, if you look at the rest of my reg videos that you already have access to on YouTube, what you will find out if you go and look at my already current regulation videos on YouTube, that it's going to have a large majority of what we're going to talk about. So I'm not going to continue to get into stuff that I've already have published on my YouTube channel. You can go back and view those regulations one at a time. But I'm going to try to make it as interesting as possible for you. If you've already seen some of my regs, you know that I don't bore you to death with this stuff, so it's not going to be that bad. Well, let's go on and start talking about what we need to know as a flight instructor in how to use regs. So what you're going to find out from me is basically 4 different things. 1, you're going to find out how to read the regulation. Now, some of you are like, Todd, I know how to read. And I'm like, I'm not doubting your ability to read, folks. I'm not doubting your ability to read. But here, check this out. Do you know that when the FAA hires their aviation safety inspectors, that's the people that come out and ramp check you and all that stuff, and they basically are like the cops. They carry a badge. If you've never seen one, you meet an aviation safety inspector. They do have a badge. They have the biggest badge I have ever seen. They're literally like the size of my hand. I don't understand how they even fit it in their wallet. Their wallet that they carry the thing in is like that big. They have to be a modified pants to carry that wallet. But anyway, they send these fine folks out to Oklahoma City to actually learn how to read the regulations. So many times people have said, Todd, I'm pretty sure right here it says in this regulation, this is what it means. I'm like, nope, because you didn't see a couple of keywords in there like of this part and of this section. And you're missing out because you haven't read every bit of the reg. Every bit of the regs. There are some regs that are in one subpart that may actually revisit from another subpart. And it can be very confusing if you let it. But once I show you how to do it, once I show you how to read it, you're not going to have those problems. That's what we're going to be talking about this week, is how do we read these regs? You got to know how to read them. And just having the plain text in front of you is not going to get it. You have to know where to go to find some of the answers. I have very good examples for you in scenarios that we're going to use to do that. The next thing is what do you do if you don't understand a reg? So we're going to be talking about other things like the use of this book. We're also going to be talking about letters of interpretations, where to find them, how to use them, and if you need to support your comment on a check ride or something, how you can bring it up to the examiner and not fail your check ride by arguing with them. Never argue with an inspector. Never argue with an examiner. The next thing is what actually pertains to you and what doesn't pertain to you. When the FAA wrote the regulations, they had no idea who's going to pick this up and read this book. They had no idea. Is it a helicopter pilot? Don't know. Is it an airplane pilot? Don't know. Glider? Don't know. Hot air balloon? Don't know. So they have to write the regs very vague. Like they can't really say, this is a pinpoint, this is what this means. Because they write it for everybody, there's a lot of stuff in there that you don't need to know. So I want to tell you, I went through one time, it was a couple years ago, and I went through the electronic version that's located on the internet, the eCFRs. And I went through and I pulled everything out that pertained to airplane. And I dropped it into a Word document. And I literally had airplane FARs. Everything that's in Part 61, everything that's in Part 91, everything single engine. And I'm going to tell you, it was less than a quarter of an inch. It was probably an eighth of an inch thick, very thin, very thin. because they write the regs for everybody, and you're not everybody. So when we go through this, we're only going to be talking about the things that's dealing with airplane, single engine, land. That's it. It's the only thing we're going to be talking about. I will make the occasional notion of multi-engine, but that's it. And the last thing that we're going to be talking about in the regs is why they're so important to you. We actually could talk about that first. It really doesn't matter the order. That's just the 4 things I want to talk to you about. But why are these things so important to you? Because they are literally how to do your job as a flight instructor, like I said a minute ago. So the main reason that you have to know these regs is to keep the FAA out of your face. That's it. If you know the regs, you'll always do your job correctly, and you'll never have a visit or anybody, you'll never have a phone call, a letter, or anything from the FAA, because this will keep them out of your hair. So you don't need these people knowing your name and on your back. You want to know your name, but in a good way. You don't want to know your name in a bad way. Safety inspectors do not like to see added work. They already got enough to contend with and enough to deal with. They don't need stuff coming from people outside of that. So let's give you a little preview about what you're going to be seeing during the week as we go through this. We're going to be starting off with FAR Part 1 and kind of just hitting through there. Remember, we're going to be talking about this as an instructor, not as a pilot. So I will be talking to you about some of the things that we have to deal with as pilots, but normally it will be, but generally, this entire thing is how to do the, is how to learn this stuff as a CFI and what it means to you as a CFI. So we'll start off on FAR Part 1. And, one of the things that I love to be able to talk about is I go through some of the definitions. I'm like, what do you think the definition of this is? And it's absolutely crazy as to the reason why people don't know certain things. Like, for instance, when we start talking about FAR Part 1, I just start picking out some of these which actually are mind-blowing. Like, I'll look up the term cross-country, and I'll say, what do you think the terminology cross-country means? And they'll say the more common definition that you hear, which is, well, Todd, it is any flight that is in excess of 50 nautical miles. And I go, well, no, that's not correct. And there is a flush look over their face, and I go, what is the definition of cross-country? And they don't know the definition of cross-country, and they don't know to go to FAR Part 1 to look it up. So then we go to FAR Part 1, and we start to look up these items. And we look at the definition of cross-country, and it starts to say in there that it's any flight conducted in an aircraft that includes a takeoff and a departure somewhere else besides the airport you took off from. Which means that if you were to take off and fly 2 miles in any direction and land, that is cross-country. Now, some of you maybe listen to this and you're like, what? And I'm like, look, I don't make this stuff up. It's in this book. Crack it open and read it every now and then. But if I'm going to be applying for a pilot certificate, private, instrument, commercial, then the flight time that is considered cross-country must be in excess of 50 nautical miles. So when's the only time it has to be over 50? When you're going to apply that cross-country time towards a pilot certificate. That's it. And they're not all the same, so you got to be really, really careful. If a person has a rotorcraft and they have like 1,000 hours and they got 500 hours across country, and they come to you and they want to do their commercial added category, how much cross country time do they have? When you look at 61-129, you realize, well, they got to have 50 hours across country. Well, do they have 50 hours across country? Yeah. But it's rotorcraft cross country, and rotorcraft cross country is 25 nautical miles, not 50 nautical miles, which means they're going to have to go up and do at least 10 hours across country in an airplane in accordance to 621-129. Anyway, that's just like how some of this stuff can really, really, really get you going. into learning and being better. Or like complex aircraft. It's kind of like a terminology that's almost becoming slightly archaic as we start to evolve through the regs. But what a better time to learn, because just last year at the end of 2018, we had the new reg that came across. It said you no longer have to have a complex aircraft to bring to the commercial or CFI single engine check ride, and you don't need to get 10 hours in a complex as well. It says you can get it in 10 hours in a complex or in a technologically advanced aircraft, TAA, or in a turbojet, a jet. And you have to know these things as a flight instructor, because you may be telling somebody they have to get 10 hours in an Aero or 10 hours in a Mooney or 10 hours or whatever in something, and that is not right. So you have to know the regs, otherwise you'll come across as a complete and total idiot. And you don't want to do that. We will go into Part 61. We will talk about how Part 61 is very poorly written. It's not laid out good at all. It's actually terribly written. But I'm going to show you how to make it better for you. Part 61 is divided up into different subparts. And we're going to take each subpart and pick it apart. But the subparts, only the very first subpart is somewhat complicated because it has more you have to worry about. But every subpart after that is very specific to what you're trying to do. So if we were looking at any subpart within the regs, it doesn't really matter. Any subpart within Part 61. So Part 61 has different subparts within inside of that part. Subpart A, Subpart B, Subpart C, D, and so on, so on. And so we know, like, all right, so I want to deal with student pilots. So if I want to deal with a student pilot, where do I go to? Well, you just open up to the regs, you turn to the applicability of a student pilot, and you say, well, subpart C is student pilots. And so no matter what, if you want to go to subpart, if you want to go to anything about student pilots, it's within subpart C. And so on, so on, so on. It falls through an order of echelon, but it's really kind of confusing. Part A should be listed first. Part B is for people who already have pilot certificates, which is kind of stupid. They should have put that all the way at the very end, not at the very front. It should literally go subpart A and then go into student pilots and then go into sport, recreational, private, instrument, or private, commercial, instrument, and then added category and class. I don't know why they do it like they do. Somebody had some good reason for doing it, and I don't know what the reason was, but that's what it is for that. And that's what we're going to be talking about in Part 61. Part 91, we're only going to kind of cover a very rough draft, just a very, very rough one-over about what it means. There's a very specific set of Part 91 that you want to know. And I'm going to show you the list. We're going to go over the list, and I'm going to tell you what you need to know as a flight instructor in regards to Part 91. Okay? Because I can scenario these into other things. Like I can scenario Part 91 into aeromedical. I can say, what altitude do you have to put on supplemental oxygen as the pilot in command? And people will say 12,500 feet. And I'll go, nay, that is not the correct answer. And some of you watching this right now, and you're like, well, I think it is the correct answer. It's 12.5, right? And I go, no, it says over 12.5. So you got to be at 12.6 or higher for more than 30 minutes. You know what? There's just so much stuff for us to talk about. I can't wait to get started on this because I love to debunk all of these crazy, crazy stuff that people have put in your heads. We are going to spend some time on NTSB Part 830, about that long because it's incredibly, incredibly short and incredibly simple. You don't really need to kind of memorize anything except what the difference is between an incident and an accident. And that's it. Not much. You can go and look at it. No one's going to make you memorize the list that's in there. If a DPE says, hey, you had an airplane, you caused excess of $25,000 worth of damage. You're like, $25,000. That seems very familiar, and I think it's an NTSB Part 830, but I have to look it up and see which one it is because I wouldn't want to make an incident report when it's an accident or vice versa, or one for an overdue airplane. So we're going to talk about that as well. We will not be talking about FAR Part 141 or 135 or 121. Those are not part of this check ride at all, period. But we will discuss what is this, the kind of the differences between Part 61 and 141, and I'll go ahead and tell you now, it's no different. The only difference between Part 61 and 141 is that 141 has a lower time requirement. And if you write a private pilot program and the FAA puts their stamp on it, then that's literally what you can do to train someone to be a private pilot. But you can't shortcut Part 61 by no means. No how, no way, no form, except required flight time. You can cut that short. Can't cut anything else short. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So I am incredibly excited to get to know you this week when we start talking about the FARs and how we can actually get into them. There's a little short video here, but I think you'll be able to get a good gist about what we're going to talk about this week. I'm trying to keep it under 25 minutes, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job of it. Our first video launches tomorrow with getting into Part 61. Actually, Part 1 is tomorrow. And then as we get through later in the week, Part 61. A lot of the videos that you're going to see this week are, of course, they are on my Patreon page. Remember that when you join my Patreon page as a very appreciated patron, you get access to all the previous videos that have been recorded. So if you missed the FOIs, no problem. Go ahead and join this week and you get access to all the FOIs videos. Now, I will tell you this, that coming on in August, I will be going to a tier, a bronze, a silver, and a gold tier on my Patreon. So I will not be charging by the video. I've had some people that complained about that. So we're just going to do the tiers. So if you want to see all the cool information, just join at whatever tier level that you're comfortable with joining, and you'll get access to so many videos throughout that time. I'm Todd Sheldon with CFI Pro, and I look very forward to cracking into the regs this week with you and answering any reg question you've ever had. I want you to post every single reg question that you could ever think of down below here in the comments section, and I'm going to be answering all those regulation questions for you. Now, next week, we're also going to have a live session on next Wednesday. I'm going to put out a special video about that, announcement this week about that. And we're going to be talking about how these reg questions would be in the check ride. So if you'd like to join me on that live session, you can ask me any question. I will give you the answer for it. And I'm also going to talk to you about how the regs are asked on the check ride. And so I will be asking the questions, and we'll be talking about how you would answer that question as a person on the check ride, as an applicant on the check ride. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Todd Sheldon with CFI Pro. Bye-bye.